You know, a very simple way to visualize Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 is to use a rock and clay. Now, we want to be like a rock in Satan's hands, resisting his molding, but we want to be like clay in Jehovah's hands. Now, being like a rock in Satan's hands really represents the first part of Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 that says, stop being molded by this system of things. And being clay in Jehovah's hands is very similar to the thought in the rest of Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 that says, be transformed by making your mind over. Now, to illustrate the difference between our reaction when Satan tries to shape and mold us with this system of things versus when Jehovah wants to, I'd like you to think of maybe you're in a public place, you're at a shopping mall, you're someplace, and a perfect stranger walks up behind you and starts to massage your shoulders. What would you do? Well, you would stiffen up and say, get away. What are you doing? But if someone you love and trust does that, well, you might relax and have a very different reaction, right? So what is our reaction when Satan wants to try and shape and mold us? It's being like a rock. But when Jehovah wants to shape and mold us, we want to be like clay. Now let's consider one rock-like quality that we need to resist Satan's shaping and molding of us, and that's courage. To start that discussion on courage, let's open our Bibles to a very straightforward, simple statement in Psalm 56 and verse 3. Psalm 56 and verse 3. It says, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. So Satan uses fear and intimidation, persecution, to get us to change our relationship with Jehovah, to try and break our integrity, to stop us from worshiping Jehovah. Now, when you read the accounts in JW News about our brothers in Russia, I'm sure all of us have some reactions where you're thinking, wow, how would I deal with that kind of persecution? Or if you're a wife, maybe you think, now how would I deal with my husband being put into prison and having these kinds of things done to him? Yes, in many ways, we are very proud of the courage, the rock-like qualities that our brothers are showing when Satan tries to shape and mold them. I was particularly moved when I read the account about the brothers and sisters in Russia in Orenburg. And here a group of brothers and sisters boldly went to the prison, identified themselves as Jehovah's Witnesses at some risk of their own freedom, and wanted to know how their brothers were being treated in the prison. Aren't we really truly proud of those kind of rock-like qualities that we see in our brothers and sisters? But now it also takes courage to resist other kinds of ways that Satan is trying to mold and shape us. It takes courage, for example, to change the channel or to click the mouse away from bad entertainment. Are we rock-like in that kind of courage? It takes courage to face sickness or terminal illness and have the rock-like hope and strength that there is going to be a resurrection. It takes courage to watch the news these days and see all that is going on in the world and keep our rock-like courage and faith that there is a new world coming and that the end of this system is coming. So the lesson for us is, are we like a rock in Satan's hands, or is it possible that we have become soft and comfortable in this system of things? Now, how are we doing about being clay in Jehovah's hands? Isaiah chapter 64 and verse 8 helps us with this discussion about the clay, because it shows the choice that we've made. Isaiah chapter 64 and verse 8. It says, but now, Jehovah, you are our Father. We are the clay, and you are our potter. We are all the work of your hands. Now, sometimes when I've heard this read, sometimes people say, we are the clay, and you are the potter. But really, that word our is very important. We are the clay, and you are our potter. that means that we've made a choice, that Jehovah is the one to shape and mold us. Now, imagine, Clay, that you go to shape and mold it and it says, ow, hey, don't do that. Hey, I don't want to look like that. Don't change me like that. Okay. What kind of reaction are we having when Jehovah's trying to shape and mold us? Well, let's consider two clay-like qualities that we can have when Jehovah is trying to shape and mold us. First of all, obedience. Now, it's clear to all of us that Jehovah is shaping and molding and preparing us for the end of this system of things and the events that are leading directly up to the Great Tribulation. So, will we be obedient when we get direction? How to preach, how to do our meetings, what assignment we may have during that turbulent time. You know, yesterday, Brother Splain made some excellent comments about King Solomon. Now, King Solomon had some divine instruction, but he ignored it. And he basically said, well, you know, I can marry lots of foreign wives and it's not going to have any effect on me. We don't want to have that kind of attitude when it comes to divine instruction. Or we could be like an athlete who hires a coach, pays him lots of money, and says, what can I do to be better? And the athlete says, well, you know, I'm the professional athlete. I really don't need to listen to what you have to say. So Jehovah is giving us counsel and advice. We want to listen. For example, this virus that is spreading around is giving us an opportunity to see about being obedient. We have many rules or guidelines that are being set for us. We may be quarantined. We may have trips and other things canceled. We may be told to wash our hands, to not shake hands, but elbow bump. Now, of course, we can try hard to be obedient to those rules and guidelines, but we also have an opportunity to not be just obedient to rules and guidelines, but be obedient to the principles behind them. And in this case, often the principle is love of neighbor. We're trying to look out for others with these rules and guidelines when it comes to the virus. And really, when you think about it, any of the opportunities we have now, it's a time to practice being obedient. It really view it as training for us. We have an opportunity to practice being obedient for the future. It's at times like this that we can set a pattern of obedience, because with time and effort and practice, we can make obedience our first reaction rather than a second reaction. Well, what's another clay-like quality that we could have is spiritual focus. Today, Jehovah is making it perfectly clear that we're living in the last days. Now, the people of Noah's time, they took no note of the time they were living in. They didn't have that clay-like quality, and they were swept away. I saw a video recently of an athlete doing a track meet. They were running a race around a track. And this one athlete, when he crossed the finish line, he throws his hands up, and he was absolutely jubilant that he had won the race. But then he didn't see anybody cheering for him, and the rest of the runners were running. He was too early. It was one more lap to go. Well, he lost track of where he was. He didn't know that wasn't the last lap. Well, we don't want to lose track of where we are in the race for life, being so busy with doing other things. Let the fact that we're living in the last of the last days influence our day-to-day decisions, become clay-like, moldable, that we're living in the last days. Pay attention to the Bible principles that are mentioned to us in the Watchtower and our meetings, and have good spiritual conversations, and those conversations can help to remind us of the time in which we're living. So the lesson for us is you have chosen Jehovah to be your potter. So be good, obedient, spiritually focused clay in his hands. Yes, we need to be like a rock in Satan's hands, and we need to be like clay in Jehovah's hands.